Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you.
Oh, don't you know, it's the Bill Arnold Show. It's Bill.
And a warm welcome to the Bill Arnold Show. Thank you for joining me today. I am still recovering from a spectacular day in Duluth yesterday. We just had a blast. And to all who showed up, thank you so much. And to the amazing church, Hermantown Community Church, and Dan Stone for hosting us. It was a really wonderful, wonderful day. So thank you all for coming and supporting us. It was great. Wyatt, you heard good news from this end.
Yeah, I had a blast too. I wasn't there. I was standing right where I am right now.
Well, next time you're coming.
But I had fun too.
And that's an order.
I had fun too. Okay, that's
all
an
right.
order.
I like ordering you around every once in a while. It doesn't ever work, but I like trying.
It's all right.
Yeah, I give it my best. All right. I think if you listen to the promotion for today, you heard me talking about my guest that was going to be in studio, who goes by the name Todd Mulliken. And all of a sudden now he...
You got half that right. With how it worked out today, right?
We got half of it right. Yeah. So Todd had a bump in the road and wasn't able to make it. And he called me and said, Laura can come, my wife. And, Laura's been involved in trafficking justice for a dozen years. And I've had her on before. And I would love to continue this conversation because I think it's getting to be not only a huge problem, but I almost think it's the number one criminal activity in the world is human trafficking. And what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it individually and as churches? And what is human trafficking? Laura is the executive director of Trafficking Justice. It's a nonprofit that works to end sexual exploitation and sex trafficking right here in the state of Minnesota. Laura, so nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I just want to say hi to Todd, and you can say hi to Todd too.
Hey, Todd. I know he's listening.
Yeah. Hey, Todd. All right. So, just pull your microphone a little bit closer. There you go. Awesome. All right, let's get into this human trafficking. Maybe we can just start by defining it, because when we hear the words human trafficking, what does that mean?
Human trafficking is an umbrella term for a lot of exploitative practices against people. So it can include debt bondage or labor trafficking.
What did you call it?
Debt bondage.
Debt.
So, for example, in parts of India or Pakistan, they might have whole generations that are owing money. And so they get put to work in a brick kiln, for example, and the quotas are such that they never catch up. So they end up owing money for housing or for food, or their quotas that they need to produce every day. There's no way to keep up with them, so they're always trying to catch up, and it leads to generational trafficking of a whole family system can be in debt and building bricks for the rest of their lives.
Wow. Okay.
So that's
how is that human trafficking, though?
Because it's if I think about human trafficking, someone is exerting their power or control to actually make money or goods or services off of the abuse of another individual.
Okay.
So often, too, we hear about scams where people who are, how many times have we gotten those things we think are going to be robocalls, but they're actually a call center someplace in a foreign country like Myanmar, and they are being labor trafficked. They are in a place where they have no access to their own identification papers any longer. They were promised a great paying job, and now they're forced to make calls and again get so many people to say yes each day. And they are housed there, fed there, abused there, and put to work for someone else's profits.
Is there any escape from that racket or that?
It's really complicated.
Okay.
There can be. Several months ago, there was a large call center. And when I say large, 3,000 plus people were being held in captivity, forced to make these calls from a call center in Burma, Myanmar. And the international authorities got involved and they managed to free those people. But as you can understand, many of them were from another country and had been promised a job. Now they're left with no papers, no identification. Some of them are absorbed into NGOs that are trying to help them find their way back home, repatriate them. Some are just stuck at the border and at the mercy of bad actors all over again because they're without resources. So there's always hope with Jesus, but if we don't take the time to actually understand what's happening to others, we'll never, if we don't look at what questions to ask, we will never do anything to be part of the solution.
Laura Mulliken is my guest. She's the executive director of Trafficking Justice. Now, I will admit, Laura, when you talked about human trafficking from that perspective, I must say, I don't know if I've heard it put that way. I always think of sex trafficking when it comes to the word human trafficking, but obviously there's a couple different categories out there.
There are. So human trafficking includes labor trafficking, as we just talked about. Sex trafficking is probably the most publicized or the most news story traction that we see here in the United States across all 50 states. And sex trafficking is any time someone uses force, fraud, or coercion to create this situation where someone has to give a sexual service or favor, and that can include like video or photos, at someone else's capacity to make money off of that or receive goods off of that, if that makes sense. And the other thing, it's a little bit of a slippery slope. Force, fraud, or coercion just internationally are required to prove trafficking charges, human or sex trafficking. But in the United States, we're finally at a place where, and here in Minnesota, we've kind of led the way in this. If you are under the age of 18, you do not need to prove force, fraud, or coercion. If someone takes advantage of you sexually and then receives money or goods or services for that, it is trafficking, period.
Yeah. A comment just came in, and are we changing up terminology to soften it? I mean, the comment was, when I was growing up, we just called it slave labor.
Oh.
Not human trafficking. That seems a little bit more, sounds like it's softer. And what was going on in Burma and Myanmar, if there's 3,000 people forced to make calls, I would call that slave labor.
It is slave labor. I would say it is slave labor. It gets really, I wouldn't say that I use human trafficking to soften it. I think it's an internationally recognized terminology. So that helps us break down barriers as we work across the United States, but also with partners across the globe. I also think, given our own history and the fact that in the state of Minnesota, for example, Black women and girls are trafficked or sexually exploited at higher rates. If I were to call that slave labor, that adds another barrier sometimes in communication. Does that make sense? So I prefer the term human trafficking, sex trafficking, and actually sexual exploitation, because things that don't rise to the level of sex trafficking, for example, sexual exploitation is an umbrella term that would be over sex trafficking, and that would include things like strip clubs, massage parlors. It would include things like a homeless teen in the middle of winter here in a cold climate, and they end up trading a sexual favor for a warm place to stay out of the cold for the night.
Wow.
So that's exploitation, but no exchange of goods or services has happened with a third party, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And certainly the word slave is a trigger word.
It
The
absolutely
minute
is.
you hear that, it's a 5-alarm fire.
Yeah, and honestly, I want to be careful with my words because I want to honor people who are already in a painful state, and come alongside of them as best as we can in a way that they can hear us well.
Mm-hmm. I would certainly say, Laura, that sex trafficking would be a problem here in the U.S., but what about human trafficking?
Actually, this again, the state of Minnesota has really begun to put more resources into human trafficking labor trafficking, because we are seeing things like large farming operations or large produce operations or animal operations that have gained papers of people who were brought in here with the promise of jobs.
Okay.
And then their IDs are confiscated.
Oh, wow.
Or even sometimes kids who are falling asleep in school, it's because they have a second labor trafficking job at night where they need to go and do work on the farm and then try to go to school and keep up the next day.
That's unbelievable.
So it's more prevalent than we want to know.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Laura Mulliken. She is the executive director of Trafficking Justice. Obviously, the trafficking and the sex trafficking, human trafficking is an enormous problem today. And if you have a question for Laura, you can text it over 877-933-2484. Laura, let's talk about the trafficking. Who is most vulnerable to trafficking?
That is such a common and a good question. I would say, think about the people that are targeted, particularly children online right now by bad actors. They are looking for kids who are lonely, kids who have expressed that they have been let down by their friends. They've had a fight with their parents. They're hopeless for some reason. Maybe they feel like they don't have enough food in the house. Maybe there's a parent who has undiagnosed or untreated mental illness or addiction. All of those things are vulnerabilities, and most of them are things that every single teenager experiences, right? At some point, I have a blow up with my parent, or I feel misunderstood by my friends. So anyone can be vulnerable, but those who are in the foster care system or who have experienced childhood sexual abuse, have dealt with addiction or incarceration in family members, those kids are at an extra high rate of actually being targeted. And I do mean targeted.
Yeah.
They are chosen because of those vulnerabilities.
Laura, are these bad actors that are preying on these kids, are they posing as kids their age?
Sometimes they are, particularly since the pandemic, right? We used to tell kids, you're not really friends if you're not face-to-face. And then we put everybody in classrooms online for every day of class. And so they're making friends online. And I can be anyone I want to pose as when I am online. So often they come into chat rooms and game, situations. I've worked with clients whose kids have met somebody in Minecraft, which is it's pretty innocuous online game, right? Like there's nothing wrong with Minecraft itself, but the chat rooms are where they will kind of pull them aside and begin to develop a relationship. And they are patient. They will take time to develop a relationship, identify vulnerabilities, cover a need, or, meet a need somewhere along the line, and then begin to sexualize that child and eventually convince them to send photos that are inappropriate.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to take a break. Go ahead, Laura.
And there's Jesus.
And there's Jesus.
Let's
yes.
get to the good stuff.
Oh no, amen. Let's get to that because this conversation it just turns my stomach.
Yeah.
Okay, Laura Mulliken is my guest. We're going to take a short break. If you have a question or comment, We're talking about sex trafficking and human trafficking and the need for Jesus in so many places, in so many lives, these young, vulnerable children that are being preyed on. It's a horrible problem. 877-933-2484. Wyatt'll get us back in 90 seconds.
Psst, have you heard the news? Listening just got better with the new and improved Faith Radio app. No more restrictions, no more static, no more missing your favorite shows. Now, listen when you want, where you want, and share with everyone. When you need hope, encouragement, Jesus, it's right there on your phone. Text the word app to 877-933-2484 and follow the link or search Faith Radio Network in your app store.
I'm back with Laura Mulliken, and you can learn more about her organization that she's with, traffingjustice.com, a website that works versus her husband's Todd's website. That I know, I like to tease Todd about that. Todd's website works too.
It does.
Yeah. I just like a recurring dumb joke every now and then.
That makes me happy.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, she's the executive director of Trafficking Justice. Now, I know there's a lot of things that we want to learn how to do, Laura, but let's just say, what's a warning sign or some kind of indication that someone might be at a tipping point, like, oh, they're in trouble? How would we know? How would we identify that?
Yeah. It's complicated because so many kids have moved so much of their lives online. So some of the warning signs show up for other things too. So it doesn't always mean that someone is being exploited or groomed, but it may be a sign if they, for example, have been a great B or A student for as long as you've known them, and all of a sudden their grades tank. And there's no other outside, like death in the family or kind of major crisis that you're aware of. We also see students start to withdraw from their friend groups, which again can be really tricky with middle school or high school, right? We also see maybe in children, sometimes we'll see problematic sexualized behavior toward another child. That's almost always a red flag. They've either seen that somewhere on a screen or someone has done something to them, and that would be a great red flag for a question. We also see things for people who are more heavily engaged in the life. They might have unexplained tattoos of someone else's name on them or dollar signs on them, things like that. But sudden changes in behavior or, again, with teenagers, it's tricky. But if you take their phone away or their screen away and they have a hyper aroused response to that, it can be that someone is controlling their need to check in with them or be in control of their devices.
Laura, what about a sudden change of appearance?
Yes, that
where
can.
A look, a certain way you dress, a certain haircut that you go, ooh, where'd that come from?
Yep. Sometimes, and again, with middle school, especially in our culture right now, we kind of encourage kids to just try things on, right? But again, if there are clothes that seem inappropriate or they're inappropriate for the season that we're in, so something revealing or high heels in the middle of a week on a Tuesday in the middle of winter, things like that can be red flags as well. The other one that kind of surprises people is that often children and teens who are experiencing sexual abuse or sexual exploitation will fail to keep care of their own body. It's like, if I don't shower, if I kind of let my hair get greasy and ratty, maybe he'll leave me alone or I'll create some distance between me and that person.
I'll be less desirable.
Yes. So
Interesting.
That can be another red flag as well.
Comment just came in from Bridget. What can we do from just a person who wants to help?
I love that question because I have long said that as a believer, anytime we cover a vulnerability for a child or a teenager, a college student, we are engaged in prevention work. So if you have your church, for example, does backpacks for kids who can't afford school supplies, if your church has a ministry to foster care respite or for single parent respite care, if you can come alongside of students who are in need of food supply being bolstered, anytime you cover one of those needs, you are preventing someone from coming into that child's life and exploiting them or extorting them somehow as they cover that need. Mm-hmm. So we do it with the grace and love of Jesus, freely given, freely offered, no expectation of anything in return. And that is a life-changing gift for someone who expects that if you give me something, what am I going to owe you?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes a ton of sense. So you're giving something, helping meet a need, providing something that is important to them, and they're finding that it's just coming in a grace-filled way. Mm-hmm. This person just cares about me.
Yes.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yes.
All right, Laura, let's talk about maybe some stories of how people in the church have been impacted by this exploitation or possibly pornography, which is out of control.
It is out of control. The rates within the church of pornography use and addiction mirror what's out in the society. And I think our churches have done us a disservice, largely, not all, because sex kind of has shame attached to it when it's outside of the covenant of marriage in the church circles. And so people feel shame if they're tempted or engaged in those behaviors, and then they don't bring it out into the open where it can be healed or brought to Jesus.
It's a big secret.
Yep. And when things go in the dark, things that grow in the dark tend to not be the most healthy for us.
Well,
right?
that's one of Satan's biggest plans, schemes, is to keep it private.
Yes, absolutely.
And underground. And that way he can exploit you even more.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, too, the people who are drawn to wanting to help have actually experienced some form of perhaps addiction or abuse or hurt themselves. And I think so often when I go out into church spaces, particularly, and share about prevention and awareness, I remember a number of years ago going out in rural Minnesota and presenting, and a woman who was well into her 70s came up following the presentation, and she grabbed both of my hands and she squeezed them and she said, "I just can't thank you enough. I realized for the first time in over 50 years today that I am not stupid."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Tell me more. What triggered that thought in you?" And she said, "Until I heard you speak, I never was trafficked. I was never, sold by anybody. But when I was a junior in high school, the summer before I went into my junior year of high school, two of the neighbor boys started sexually abusing me in the barn on the next farm over. And my grades tanked. And I had always had the dream of going to college. And my dad said, 'I'm not spending money on you going to college. You are stupid.' And she said, I internalized that lie that I was stupid. And I never till today, 50 plus years later, put together the idea that, I was a straight A student until this awful thing started happening to me that I couldn't talk to anybody about because they went to the same Sunday school class. They were in the same small school in rural Minnesota. And she didn't feel like she had anybody to tell that story to. And so the external stuff became an internal belief for her that she was stupid.
That was her fable, wasn't it?
It was.
I'm stupid. And she knew she wasn't.
Yep.
But she's probably showing bad grades at home, and the dad's saying, if these are your grades, we can't spend money on college because you're not applying yourself or you don't have the capacity to earn a degree. That's the really sad story.
Yeah. And by the grace of God, she came to this random community gathering for churches and is now walking in new freedom.
Yeah,
right?
well,
it's just.
Laura, you and I, we know we don't call that random.
Yeah.
God led her there.
Yeah. I also think about other things like within the church, again, to be able to create family systems where we're talking early and often about appropriate touch, good touch, bad touch, good pictures, bad pictures. With young kids, I worked a number of years ago with two moms who were in the southern suburbs of our large metropolitan area. And they had 5 and 7-year-olds that had become buddies, a little girl and a little boy. And moms were upstairs having coffee together. Kids were down in the basement playing. And the little girl came running upstairs and she told the moms that her friend, who was a 7-year-old boy, had tried to touch her inappropriately. And good for the girl. I mean, kudos that she actually said something to an adult and that the adults believed her. Mm-hmm. And yet the adults also freaked out and said, where did you learn this? Why did you do this? And he just shut down because of the shame and the stress. And so with the parents' permission, I sat in a room with him and they were in an adjacent room. And I said, buddy, usually when I do something that I've never done before, it's because somebody's done something to me or shown it to me, or they've shown me pictures or something. Can you tell me what gave you the idea to reach out to your friend like that? And it came out that he had been on an activity bus in the community summer program, and an older boy was sitting next to this young child and said, you want to know what girls like? And then showed him pornography on the phone.
Wow.
And when I say I'm a little long in the tooth now, I'm older. So when I think pornography, I used to think like Playboy centerfolds or something. But this is a video screen with violence playing out, with voices, pictures. And this kid didn't have a place to put or process any of that in his brain. And so he's playing with his little girlfriend and says, she's a girl. This is what girls like. And he just tried it. So if a kid discloses whether something's been done to them or, they've done something, believe the child and then ask calm, curious questions. Make sure it doesn't turn into an interrogation because we don't want to build more shame. We want to actually be happy that they came to us because those things don't just come up out of the blue. Mm-hmm. And then there's hope for a different future.
And Laura, isn't it important to teach kids that there are no secrets? Especially if someone says, now you keep this our secret.
Yes.
And so they come home and there are no secrets, so I'm going to tell you exactly what was told to me. Mm-hmm. And then I was told, this is our secret, and there are no secrets.
Yep. I have a friend who uses different phrases with her kids. She says, in our family, we can have surprise. There are secrets and surprises. Secrets are no good.
Right.
Secrets are not good. If somebody tries to keep you to, trick you into keeping a secret from mom or dad or your siblings, that's not good. Come and tell us. If it's a surprise, it might be, we're going to throw Uncle Bill a surprise birthday party.
That's okay.
But that's a surprise that he's going to find out about. It's not something that I'm keeping secret from Uncle Bill for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great distinction and probably something that everyone should teach kids and grandkids.
Yes, absolutely.
How important that is, because this poor girl from rural Minnesota who spent 50 years feeling like she was stupid and trapped and she couldn't say anything and she had to keep quiet. And that's a cycle of just torture.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think other stories that come to mind, Todd, well, my husband Todd, so I'll tell us Todd's story. How about that? Todd and I Todd has been a supporter of me working in anti-trafficking circles for more than a decade. And a number of years ago, I wanted to take a couple of women who were survivors of sex trafficking to a Kirk Franklin concert. And so there were a lot of other things happening in downtown Minneapolis that night. And so Todd, being Todd, volunteered to be our Uber driver. Mm-hmm. So he was driving to the event with us, and the two women are in the back seat. I'm in the passenger side next to Todd, and I don't remember what he did. A light was pink, and he kind of squeezed through it or something. And I chirped at him in the car. I know that's greatly shocking to you. And just kind of said, what are you doing? Stop. And then we went to the concert. He came back and picked us up after we had dessert or something out, and we dropped them home. Had a lovely evening. Well, I saw them again at the residential shelter that I was working at the time, and they both looked at me and said, "We couldn't believe what you did on Friday night." And I'm like, what did I do? I danced too white. I don't know, And they said, "No, you clapped back at him. We thought he was going to hit you." Because it was normal for them to be so controlled that if they spoke up for themselves or had an opinion that was different from that of the person who was in control of their lives, they would have gotten smacked.
That's dangerous territory, isn't it?
It never crossed my mind that Todd would hit me because it's never happened, and it never would happen. It's just not in my norm.
Right.
But that also kind of shows, I think, what church people need to be so aware of is that different people have different norms, right? Mm-hmm. And as we're coming out of abuse or out of darkness, we need to be in relationship with others that can show us light. And I think that's another thing that church can be, a safe place to slowly come to the realization that there are other ways to do life. So
good. Laura Mulliken is my guest, Executive Director of Trafficking Justice, talking about human trafficking and sex trafficking. If you have a question, 877-933-2484. My guest today is Laura Mulliken. She's the Executive Director of Trafficking Justice. We're talking today about human trafficking and sex trafficking. Laura, what would you say to someone who's survived an episode of this, or they've been spiritually abused, or they've been abused from someone in the church, and they say, "No more, I have no interest in church"?
Yeah. Actually, one of my adopted daughters, not legally, but in spirit and heart, is a former, she's a sex trafficking survivor who has made great strides and grew up in a very high control church environment where she ended up being trafficked by one of the youth volunteer workers in her church program.
Trafficked?
Yes, she was. Oh. And it's a very sad story. You can actually hear part of it on our website. You can watch the video of her testimony. And she loves Jesus more than a lot of people I know in my life or in the church, and talks to him daily, relies on him. But church is a hard place for her to go sometimes. And I think we as Christians need to be loving and caring. I think about Jesus hanging out with the tax collectors and the prostitutes. He wasn't inviting them to the synagogue to listen to scripture first, right? He sat around a table with them. Mm-hmm. He did life with them. He got to know them and met their needs and provided healing and hope. And I think sometimes we want to check people even off of our boxes, or we want to check off that box, right? We just want them to come and live right. And even in my personal experience, Bill, I know you have done phenomenal work in kind of the recovery world with people who have wrestled with addictions, right? And God, in his mercy to me, has never revealed all of my sins or the areas that I need to work on in my life at once, because I think I would be crushed beneath the weight of it. But he very patiently shows me when I need to work on my temper, where I need to work on my patience, where I need to work on, cutting something out of my life. And he gives me one or two of those to work on at a time. And I think as we walk with people toward healing and wholeness, we need to be willing to walk at a slower pace with them. And that doesn't mean that they're going to find a Sunday morning church service particularly helpful on any given Sunday. I think we can do study in the Word with them. We can expose them to a women's group or a men's group or a youth group or something where they can experience Christian community first. And then we'll work toward church.
Or maybe it's the 20-minute conversation you have in the lobby after the service.
Absolutely.
And that's where it all happens.
It is. I go to I would call it a suburban church, largely, right? A lot of suburban people who on the outside look like they've got pretty much life together. But I cannot tell you I cannot count on both of my hands the number of women in the last decade who have come up to me and shared their own story of sexual assault or trafficking or exploitation, just because I became a safe person by virtue of the job that I have. And they're all sitting in the pew with me every Sunday.
Wow.
So it's everywhere. It's pervasive, and we don't talk about it. And so we need to, just be aware of our own story and then look for people that we can walk with.
Yeah. How would you draw that out of someone? I mean, obviously you're a sounding board because you can introduce yourself and the work you do. And a light can go off in their head going, oh, I might have found someone that will understand me.
Yeah.
But if you go to church, who in the world are you going to be able to find to talk to?
I find that in circles of church people, so often those who have been through recovery become safe places for people.
I agree.
Because if I'm willing to share my story of how Jesus transformed my life, that gives me hope.
They know how to
do
talk
the
turkey.
same for me.
Yep. Question came in about how does one forgive or finalize accountability with someone that's been abusive? I mean, even this woman who was 50 years ago abused, I'm sure the abuser is possibly long gone, but was there any period at the end of the sentence?
Sometimes there is, and sometimes it is, whether for emotional or physical safety or spiritual safety, sometimes it is best to step away from, draw a hard line boundary in that relationship and trust that Jesus is going to be the ultimate judge and that God in his mercy and justice will bring justice to that person, whether it's in this lifetime or the next. That's a hard thing to sit with, but it also allows me not to have to face someone again and again who is not willing to admit culpability or change.
Another thing we can do, Laura, is we can grant them forgiveness.
Yes.
Whether they hear the words or not, I grant them forgiveness. And then you let the Lord deal with it.
Yep. I think forgiveness is so powerful, right? Being married to a marriage and family therapist, there are...
Is that what he does?
Yeah, there's so much stress that we carry if I'm harboring unforgiveness towards you, Bill.
Right.
It is physically impacting me far more than it's impacting you.
Right. And if I'm uncommunicative, Laura, you can just grant me forgiveness, can't you?
Yes.
And I never hear from you, but you've granted me forgiveness.
Yes. And that's doing business with God.
It is
right?
doing business with God. Yeah.
It's doing business with God and saying, I believe, God, that you are big enough to take this. And I need to also realize in my weakness that forgiveness might take time. It might be a process. I can say it until I actually believe it or experience it. It's not like a magic thing. I'm going to just
Don't actions come before feelings, though?
They absolutely can. Yeah.
I won't
Absolutely
forgive
can.
until I feel like forgiving. Well, that's never going to
Yeah,
happen.
then it's not gonna. Yeah, not getting off that train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you grant forgiveness and then pray that God will fill in
Yes.
all that you need.
Yes. And he's good that way.
He's the best.
He's really good. That
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Laura Mulliken is my guest. She's the executive director of Trafficking Justice. We're talking about human trafficking, sex trafficking. And if you have a question or a comment, we'd love to hear from you. Please text it over 877-933-2484, 877-933-2484. We'll be right back. It is my deepest desire that you take the very first step of faith by placing your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If you've got questions about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus, text the word faith to 41224. Laura Mulliken is my guest. She's the executive director of Trafficking Justice. It's a nonprofit that works to end sexual exploitation and sex trafficking right here in the state of Minnesota. Laura, we all want to be showing up and supporting and helping and loving and caring for people who have been abused. I know you've got some reminders for those of us in the faith community when we're trying to do our best to support survivors.
Yeah. I think if I want to make a difference, like I say, anytime you're covering a vulnerability, right? So Kara Powell of Fuller Youth Institute talks about how every teen or student kid needs another adult outside of their parents, even if their parents are healthy Christian family, right?
Yeah.
They need another trusted adult in their life. And so if you are able to kind of step in and be a trusted adult, to take an interest in those kids that are sitting down the pew from you on Sunday morning, to find out what they're engaged in at school, go to their concert, go to their sporting event, be a supportive, trusted, not creepy adult in their life. I think also, being a safe person to talk to about hard things like pornography or things that have happened to me. I need another adult. Sometimes the people who are closest to me, I walk with parents often who discover that their kids have been groomed online for exploitation, or they've been coerced into sending nude photos or something. And often as we're sitting talking with the parent or the grandparent or the youth worker, I'll say something similar to this. I'll say, I know that this is scary. I know that you love your child or your grandchild or your student. But right now, you're freaking out and they're hearing that love as anger. And that causes them to withdraw or to shut down. So let's you and I sit and have a conversation. How can you express your love and concern for your child in a way that makes your love louder than your fear? Does that make sense?
Oh, does it ever? That requires skill, though. And if we're caught in the middle of emotion, how do we show up to the table with that skill?
Deep breath before you ever speak a word.
That's not a native emotion.
No, it's not.
Especially if it involves your child or grandchild.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because those protective factors kick in, and I just want to go to battle. And
plus, you're dealing with shock and surprise of the behavior they're involved in.
Yes.
You're doing what?
Yes.
Yes. You can't control it at that point.
And they will hear that as blame. And sometimes the kids are, maybe they've been down a slippery slope, or they're, complicit in part of what's been done to them. But much like an assault victim, right? What's one of the rules? It is not the assault victim's fault.
Right.
It is not this child or this young adult's fault that someone else has chosen to use their body for their own gratification.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling there could be some self-diagnostic going on right now in many people's minds, thinking, about the way in which they reacted to a particular situation. It may not have been regarding what we're talking about, but just as a parent or grandparent, responding a little in a hyper sort of over-the-top way.
Yeah.
That would have made the situation possibly worse. And it wasn't their intention to do that. And
No.
God bless them because they're doing the best they can.
I know Todd and I had my husband, who's the therapist and a friend
That's what
of
he does?
Bill's. He and I had a discussion, and we ended up having this saying that has lasted in our lives for a couple of decades now. And I wish we had come to it sooner in my parenting journey. He would say, okay, you're arguing with our daughter. Hard to believe, ever a parent arguing with a teenager or middle schooler. But when you're arguing, because I grew up in an amount of abusive behavior in my family of origin, I never got to win any fight. It just was always because I say so or do as you're told.
Yeah, you're
That
the
was it.
designated loser.
Yes, that is a perfect way to put it. And so now as an adult, my unhealthy part of me was wanting to win every fight or have the last word in every fight. And Todd and I kind of sat down and tried to figure out how I could reframe that so I could get off of that need to win train. And we now say to each other, okay, even when I'm squabbling with him, is my need to win greater than my need to love you well
that's
in this
interesting.
moment?
Yeah.
And that has helped change the trajectory for us and a lot of people that we've shared it with. But we both kind of try to live by that rule. Is my need to win this argument greater than my need to love you
That's
well?
powerful. Yeah, and designated loser. That's because I just grew up watching All-Star Wrestling. And before the wrestling match started, I knew who was going to lose.
You knew, for sure.
Yeah. So, Laura, what keeps you going?
Oh, my goodness. You know, it is the hope of Jesus. I have seen God work miracles and transform lives.
Powerful, isn't it?
It is so powerful. And I think we have an obligation. I mean, I feel like once I've seen this problem, I can never again look away and pretend I haven't seen it, much like William Wilberforce said a long time ago. I believe that Jesus is coming back again, and I believe with every fiber of my being that it is my responsibility as a follower of Jesus to try and bring pockets of kingdom light here and now before Jesus comes again and establishes the new heavens and new earth.
Well, that's a beautiful, beautiful mission statement, Laura. And there is so much need, and I want to say God has led you into this place where you can do this ministry. I think for many, when they hear what you're doing and wondering how in the world could I come alongside and participate in the life of someone who has had so much pain and suffering in their life, and could I be the kind of person that could minister to them?
Yeah.
Or would they write me off? Well, like you don't understand.
Yeah. Well, and when I first started this work, I remember driving someone to an appointment, a medical appointment of some sort, and she kind of just threw out a little bit of her story, and I just kind of responded in the moment, and then we moved on to another topic. And she told me months later that she knew in that moment that she could probably trust me with more of her story because I didn't freak out at just a little bit of her story.
They're testing you, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Because if you overreact, I'm done.
Yep, I'm out. I'm out if you overreact.
Yeah.
So again, I think even if we look at the golden rule, right? Like love God and then love others and do unto them as you would like that to be done to you. Like if I try to put myself in the other person's shoes and then respond in a way that I would want to be cared for or heard is a great place to start.
Laura, thank you so much for being here. Laura Mulliken has been my guest. She is the executive director of Trafficking Justice. Learn more about that at traffickingjustice.com. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, Pastor Dr. Jarrett Stevens is in hour 2. You're not going to want to miss this. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.